Hey guys, I hope you are well. I want to do a little pre-record video to give my analysis on the whole kerfuffle of Mike Rinder and his 7-part video, of which I all watched, versus Aaron Smith Levin. I will start by saying I expect to lose a fair amount of subscribers from this. Nobody likes it when you take a nuanced approach, when you try to look at logic, when you try to appreciate the good in both Aaron and Mike. So I expect a lot of people to be very angry at me and say, how dare you not say the other person is this demon in human form? But I think that's always an approach I've taken. I'm always very slow to judge. I generally give people the benefit of the doubt, and I don't harbor a lot of hate in my heart, and I'm not a hardcore partisan person. That's why I sort of decided to become a journalist. Even in politics, I looked at it in the way that everybody reflexively decided to have one point of view or the other based on they want to be the opposite of what their enemy is thinking. So everything gets personal, everything gets cult-like, and the whole concept of groupthink, I think, is very dangerous, because groupthink oftentimes centers around not logic, not reason, not objectively analyzing each and every bit of info, but of supporting one person at the head of that group and having that person be their de facto leader. I always think that's remarkably dangerous. So I just kind of wanted to give my opinion, and it's going to be a nuanced take. I will start by saying I have had and still have, despite both of their transgressions, a lot of respect for both Mike Rinder and Aaron Smith Levin. I've communicated with both of them. Aaron has had me on his channel, I think, at least 6 or 7 times, and Mike Rinder shouted me out even without asking on his podcast with Leah, which I really appreciated. And when I got fired from being a TV news anchor, I was trying to get on a bunch of different podcasts to be interviewed, and Mike was very helpful in emailing certain people to try to make that connection. So, both of them have been helpful to me personally, and I both appreciate both of their efforts in terms of how they've had a very small role in my life. That being said, I've never really had a substantive, long conversation with either one of them, so I don't know either one of them too well. I think the crux of all of this is based on information that is impossible to ascertain, information that is impossible to shine a spotlight as to who is correct and who isn't, and that is specifically in reference to the affidavit in terms of the abuse that Miriam Francis obviously faced. What it all boils down to is that Miriam feels that Mike Rinder certainly had to have known about her abuse because he was in the same apartment, the same living space as her abuser. It's entirely possible that even though they were in the same space, Mike didn't. It's entirely possible, and I think that's the case, that Miriam feels that's the truth. That is the truth to Miriam. She's not deliberately lying or omitting information or anything like that. But it's also possible that Mike was telling the truth as well. You have to kind of look at each individual kernel and kind of analyze it and see, well, where can you get the information? Where can it be gleaned from? I think it starts off, the whole situation starts off with an overreaction from Mike. Aaron has certainly had an irresponsible, messy personal life. The thing is, as a TV news anchor, let's say, for example, I had a fellow anchor who got fired for drunk driving. Drunk driving's pretty bad, but not only that, but it makes the news station look bad, and you're a public figure for that news station. That news station loses support. The thing is, Aaron was not being paid. People's life were on the line because they need help, but nobody's life in terms of relation to their relationship with the foundation was necessarily on the line. So, and I've talked about this story before, but I used to be on a family foundation, and there was a member who yelled at the hotel staff because she wouldn't give him a new key, and then once he finally got in, he took a dump in the middle of the carpet in the hotel room, and the results were, at least in this foundation that I was a part of, that he'd be suspended for 6 months, but since then he has rejoined and has been this is 15 years ago, 20 years ago even, and has since been a great member. So I wouldn't have kicked Aaron off for his sophomoric and frat-like ventures to Columbia. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate on, did he abuse that woman? Did he throw that person to the ground? And that doesn't necessarily have an answer to it. It looks like she threw her pretty hard, and we all saw the video. Of course, his defense is that he was being attacked. Then do you analyze it and think, well, Aaron is so strong, could he have just swatted her away, pushed her, but not pushed her to the ground, and simply had run away? I don't know. And that's something, again, that you can't really know the answer unless you're one of those two people. So there's a lot of stuff where people are very eager to make judgments on the other person based on information that is unverifiable on either side. And I don't think any of that information negates the effective work that both Aaron and Mike have done. I think it's sad that the anti-Scientology movement is essentially being fractured, but that's not too surprising, because in any sort of organization, in any sort of career land, whatever it might be, media land, things become political. Things become high school part 2, where everything is a personal, emotional beef with the other person, and they get a cadre of people to support them, and the other people fall in line with the other team necessarily. So it's funny. Politics is not unique in that way, and I've certainly lost subscribers by trying to have an objective point of view in the election. But it is not unique to politics. What I realize is the tragedy of life is that adults are a lot less mature than you think they are, and everything boils down to the ego and the id, which I think was both the case in Aaron's situation, Mike Rinder's situation. So Mike Rinder, I thought, was reckless and unfair to get rid of Aaron from the Aftermath Foundation. The problem is, for the good of the anti-Scientology community and the good of avoiding any serious fracture, Aaron could have said, hey, I disagree with this, but they had this consensus feeling that my behavior is unbecoming. I think the behavior is pretty minor. It's outside of the foundation. So usually you'd get fired or cans from a foundation or removed from a foundation if your actions are on the foundation time. Let's say there was a special meeting and you acted egregiously, then that would be grounds for dismissal. But if you have these sophomoric actions, perhaps worse than sophomoric, that's, again, something that we don't necessarily know the answer to. But if it was just sophomoric and inappropriate, calling somebody a see you next Tuesday, that was a scene that lost him his council seat probably, and then bragging about his coke-fueled sex binge in Colombia, are those necessarily things where that person's a bad person? No, that person might have an alcohol issue, but doesn't necessarily show that the person's a bad person. Nor does anything really, in my opinion, show that Mike Rinder is necessarily a bad person. So in my opinion, therein lies the difference. In terms of, is Mike being evil or not, Miriam Francis remarked that or Mike remarked for withholding the affidavit that he did admit to withholding certain pieces of evidence, so we have to recognize that. But he said which seems kind of far-fetched to me, just kind of analyzing and talking about this out loud with you guys, that Mike Rinder said he was doing this, he was holding that information because it would have revealed other information about ex-Scientologists who were victims, and they would have been further subjected to harassment and ongoing stress on behalf of the Church of Scientology. So he says he was trying to protect them. To me, that seems far-fetched. I don't know how many additional victims would be floating around in this documentation, but it's certainly a possibility. And again, there's no way to check. The other thing is, if he's guilty, which seems, I would even say, likely, are you really going to be furious at a guy for trying to protect himself from going to jail? Not to say that he wouldn't necessarily deserve to go to jail, but if you're doing all this anti-Scientology work, we have to have the same level of judgment that we have for Mike, that we have to have that for other people. And Mike certainly was in a position of authority where he committed a lot, probably more worse deeds. But Aaron was still in the Sea Org. Other people were still in the Sea Org. They certainly were brainwashed by Scientology, certainly coerced people in their different way. Tori, who I adore, was an OSA. I think we all love Tori. But she certainly tried to quell protesters, issued plans to follow people, orchestrated that. But I think Tori has made up for that. Now, the question is, how severe is your misdeed? Can you make up for it? Or is it so egregious where your name is immediately mud? And we always, in my opinion, it's important to look at the severity of each action. So it's entirely possible that Rinder there was some bad stuff and he was trying to keep himself from going to jail. But I don't necessarily think that makes him evil, or that makes him, or that negates his entire legacy of introducing the evils of Scientology to an audience of millions. I just simply don't. And to me, that this is all sad because I have respect for both Aaron and Mike. Mike is clearly on his last leg, although that's another argument. If Mike really had some stuff and he's on his last leg, he's probably not going to even face jail time. Maybe just say it. But then you look at the other side and maybe he said everything and there isn't much to say anymore. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot that Mike is hiding in his past, and I think he had a bit of a failure in which he could have come clean about, I did this, I did that. But again, if you have that same level of judgment for Mike, you also must have it for Mark, for Claire, for Aaron, for Tori, for a myriad of people involved, for Nora, for a myriad of people involved in the issue. Now, my other concern, and I respect Mike a little more in this specific situation, but who is a person that kind of took the ball and ran with it? Who is a person that made it worse? I have some respect for Mike for really shutting up, even though many people want the opportunity to defend themselves. And Aaron made a molehill into a mountain, right? He got a mountain out of a molehill. So instead of, again, Aaron could have just said, listen, I completely disagree. This is unfair. I've had a big impact, but this is Mike's decision. This is all I'm going to say about it. Instead, I think he got hyperbolic, and he got furious because Leah Remini liked one of the tweets of one of the Jane Does that wasn't enamored with Aaron. And so Leah Remini didn't even make a comment. So it seems like there's somebody that is searching for specific reasons to, just because somebody lightly or behind the scenes said, I'm not big on Aaron, he's made that person a victim. I am also not a fan of Aaron going after Alex Barnes-Ross. I think that was totally unnecessary. And it's, you focus your ire on somebody, and then some people, unfortunately, decide to expand that ire. Instead of focusing the ire on Mike Rinder alone, you now want to focus your ire on 5 other people, 4 of which had very little to do with the situation, if anything, if perhaps nothing to do with the situation in the first place. To me, that is dangerous because it denigrates powerful anti-Scientology voices that we need in the community. Alexander Barnes-Ross is one of those powerful voices. Another powerful voice is Nora. I think Nora got way too upset because Aaron wouldn't respond to her, and that's kind of ridiculous. And she kind of felt entitled to be... the parasocial relationship stuff, even though they had a real friendship, can be very damaging. And I think some people in YouTube always want to be the center of attention, and when they're not, they feel deeply betrayed and upset. I'm bad at responding to people, so I don't hold it against other people if they don't respond to me, unless I'm super aggressive or it's super important. But Nora just seems to be feeling, which is extreme, that Aaron hates her because he didn't respond to a few messages. And people are busy, and not everything revolves around you. She took it as his personal slight. It just could have been that Aaron was dealing with a lot. But here's the problem. Nora is a great voice in the anti-Scientology world. And Aaron, instead of just letting it go, because Nora has 15,000 subscribers and Aaron has 242,000 subscribers, you think he just wouldn't talk about it. Instead, what he tries to do is he tries to go out of his way to ruin his formerly close friend's livelihood. It's the same methodology that ZDT employs, right? One of the reasons ZDT is the only person I really talk shit about, and most other people I don't, is because he's the only one who has done things truly egregious where it comes to the point in severity where his life should be affected and ruined and he should face justice. EDT has gone out of his way to call Child Protective Services and Solomon, for example, to call protesters' parents and try to get them fired from their employment. So there's some really, really bad stuff that ZDT has done. Aaron has not gone to that level. But for Aaron filing the copyright strikes against Nora, the question is, can't you just put your ego to the side and allow a powerful anti-Scientology voice to continue in the sphere? Once you could talk shit as much as you want. I think people get too angry when people talk shit about another person, quite frankly. But the moment that you take that step and take it so personally where you feel like this person's income and livelihood and family reliance on her income to take care of her family. She has an entire family she has to take care of. That's when I think it's a bad move, and you make things a lot worse. I think ultimately this instance is quite minor. Miriam is understandably seeking justice and deserves to do so, but we can't really know the answers. We can't know what's in that affidavit, and we can't know the real reason why it wasn't necessarily uncovered. Mike has given his legitimate reasons. Miriam has given a lot of tangible, effective evidence as to why Mike is simply covering up her abuse and trying to have himself not be implicated. We can't know the answer. And I think so many of us are so quick to agree with the person that we side with that we don't analyze each and every little objective kernel and try to make our own conclusions. So again, this is probably going to have me lose. I expect myself to lose 50 subscribers only because I might be the only one saying I really admire the work of Aaron and Mike. I think Aaron is incredibly reckless and has hurt the anti-Scientology community. I think Mike has a lot to answer for. That being said, I don't think it negates either of the two men's effective work. Collectively, between Aaron garnering, in the span of 2 or 3 years, probably 2 million, 3 million views on his channel, and with the A&E television show, there'd be no anti-Scientology YouTube movement without Mike Rinder's and Leah Remini's television show on A&E. That's how I got interested in Scientology. That's how I was fascinated by it. I'd travel after a long day, and I'd rush back home to watch the new Aftermath TV episode. So that must have been broadcasted to A&E. It gets good ratings. Probably 3-4 million people collectively saw that. So you have two men who have had at least 10 million people newly become aware of the anti-Scientology efforts. And I would ask all of you, do you really want to throw vitriol and hatred on either side? And I would say in this case, Aaron has taken the ball and ran with it further, so there might be some more justification with it, but I don't think it's necessarily worth it. I would say just focus on the people who are fighting against the church and just tune out everything else. That would be my suggestion, because it's sad, because again, I have respect for both of these people, and I hate to see a movement fracture. And I guess for anybody who's watching me, I would just simply encourage you to watch both of them and to not hate them simply because of this one specific incident. But it is sad because I think Aaron has been, more so than Mike, has been trying to, Marilyn Honig is an example in which he's responded to a lot of this, trying to orchestrate and get people to attack an individual because he feels personally hurt, which is kind of, I mean, to me, it's like kind of Aaron's being a little bitch. I mean, that's how I would describe it. He's being a little bitch girl who's about 12 years old. That's how I'm viewing Aaron in this situation. He's not acting like a man. A man looks at things logically, or an adult even. I shouldn't gender it. He's not acting like an adult. An adult looks at things logically, level-headed, and they think, is my personal emotional success or validation worth destroying another human being who is working for the same cause that I'm working for? And if you put your emotion first and you think everything else be damned, then that will have me judging you. Again, I will circle back and say, for people who have said Aaron has physically abused somebody, I haven't seen tangible proof. To say that Aaron has done such evil things where he should not be listened to, I don't feel that's the truth either. So again, I'm going to lose subscribers because I think that the general thing is hate one or the other, or hate both of them. I'm perhaps the only one on here saying I have a lot of respect for the two of them, but a lot of them have stepped in deep shit and have not acted appropriately. So I just kind of wanted to give my rub as somebody involved in the space. And yeah, please do subscribe. Please don't, even if you disagree with me, I hope you find things interesting, and please don't unsubscribe. We'll ask you to please do subscribe, but I would also ask you to not unsubscribe, because perhaps it's healthier to have more of an objective third-party person viewing all of this. And perhaps the way that you can be best informed, at least that I try to do, is listen to a myriad of other people and draw your own conclusions. So I know that some of you your faces are red right now because you're saying, how dare I not call Mike Rinder a vicious criminal? How dare I not call Aaron Smith-Levin a rapist? How dare I? And I've gotten that with politics. It's hard for me to hate people, guys. It's hard for me to hate two people who are responsible for 10 million people being aware of the evils of Scientology. It's hard for me to have hatred for two people who have been kind to me. It's also hard for me to think that they're on the right the entire time when I see a movement that I love getting ripped apart and getting dissipated by a battle of egos. Perhaps Aaron's ego was bigger, but Mike Rinder certainly had that. And excused Aaron after an effective job on the Foundation for some sophomoric, but ultimately, in my opinion, forgivable and largely inconsequential behavior. Again, we're going to have to analyze what did Aaron really do. Is there something deeper? But for the surface level stuff, it's forgivable, and it's behavior that has nothing to do with the Foundation. So it'll be interesting to see after I post this video if I lose subscribers or if I don't, but I hope you at least had a level, found this interesting, even if your head is hot and you're angry that I'm not directing hatred at one or the other. Again, it's just not something that I feel. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt and look at them as a whole. And again, if you want to judge Mike Rinder, which perhaps we should, then we have to judge 7 other people who had those misdeeds. And I just found it interesting that Mike was beloved in this community, and I always thought it was weird. I mean, I was reading Mike Rinder's book, A Billion Years, great book, but I kept waiting for the last page for Mike to say, I did this, I covered up this, I brainwashed this person, I allowed a child auditor in this situation, I approved child labor trafficking in this situation, and we all know that's what he did, right? I mean, Mitch Brisker has owned up a little bit more than he has, for example, but we all know that that's what he did to the level and degree and to the specific analysis of the affidavit. That's a different story, but we all know it's pretty obvious that Mike was involved in cover-ups and some serious shit. I'm sure Aaron was also involved in brainwashing and intimidating people, so we all have sins to answer for, and I just find it interesting that people thought it was relevant to answer for these sins only very recently, not when Aaron had Mike on his stream. So I just lament. I see the old streams of Aaron and Mike connecting, and they're both great communicators. I wish Mike a full recovery. He looks like he's on his last leg, and he's trying his hardest. Hopefully, that's why he said he wants to do this video too, to kind of let out his emotions, which I totally get. He wants to clear it. But then again, as people are saying, that perhaps he wanted to own up, especially if he's going to go soon, potentially. And I hope he doesn't. I hope he lives another 20 years, and there are alternate remedies that do miraculously work, and it's not even miraculous. It's 15 to 20% of the time, perhaps. So I'm hoping that Mike is here with us for a very long time, but I understand why he wanted to do this. So yeah, I hope I don't lose subscribers. If I do, that's okay, because I just think there should be a voice of reason and somebody a little objective who has respect for both of these people. And I would encourage you to remain subscribed to me and remain subscribed to Mike and Aaron, and maybe we'll get some distance with this in 6 months. There'll be a big anti-Scientology victory, and hopefully bygones will be bygones. But just remember, groupthink is dangerous, and just because you like somebody and you've been watching them every day and they're almost like family, they enter your living room or they enter your phone while you're relaxing, doesn't mean they're right all the time, and then you have to agree with them all the time, because that is cult-like, that is Jim Jones-like, and we don't want to, or Miscavige-like, and we don't want to fall into those same traps. And if we take pride in being against Scientology, and we have an interest in being oppositional to Scientology, I would hope a lot of you watching would also take pride in being aware of how evil this cult is and being an individualistic thinker. We are amazed by the evil of Scientology and how they mind control people, because we think, we can never fall into that trap. But I see a lot of people falling into that trap, which is very ironic, because you're decrying Scientology for mind control and for this unquestioning worship of David Miscavige, but yet these two groups unquestionably worship either Mike or Aaron. So I just want you, as you're watching things, to kind of be aware and have an open mind. So that's my little opus. This probably won't win me any friends, but you never know. And I will do some rundowns on Henry's hearing and Josiah, and I'll be back in LA in January for Henry's trial, which will be certainly interesting. And so we'll have some more trial coverage and talk a lot about that. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.